Welcome to Getting to Know Chronicle. I'm John Stoner, and today we're going to use the string function concatenation in a YARA-L rule. While string matching and regular expressions can provide a good deal of flexibility, there are cases where additional capabilities are needed. Chronicle provides a set of functions that can be used for building YARA-L rules. Today we're going to focus on a string function for concatenation. The concatenation function takes n number of arguments and returns a string with these values in a single field or variable. Strings.concat provides a method to take strings, integers, floats from UDM as well as constants to create a value that can be used in a rule. Strings.concat can be used in the outcome section to gather values into a single field, but can also be used in the events and match section. Today we'll demonstrate these examples along with using it as a match variable in our rule. To highlight a few different ways that we can use the function strings.concat, we have a starter rule here that is looking for file events from our Zeek sensor. We've refined our data set to just HTTP events where the principal IP address has a 10 dot address. We're going to start off by not having a match variable to aggregate over a specific time, but we'll add that shortly. With our defined criteria, we have 4 detections during our test window. I realize this isn't a very exciting rule, but our focus here is how we can use the concat function in the context of any rule, so stick with me. A common question is, how do I concatenate an IP address and port? IP addresses in UDM are stored as strings and ports are stored as integers. Strings.concat can easily put these fields together. Now, before we start celebrating how easy that was, I should mention that an IP address field is a repeating field, so that does add a little complexity. We can handle repeated value fields in a few ways depending on the use case and if the function is being used in the outcome or event section of our rule. Let's walk through a few different scenarios. We'll start by defining the first value in the repeated field of target.ip to be our target_IP placeholder variable. Placeholder variables and UDM field names can both be used in outcomes, so let's start by putting them both together within our function. When we test our rule, we can see that we have the outcome variable of IP_port populated with a concatenation of these values, and we can see the 2 columns for target.ip and target.port displayed as well. The only problem I can see with this is that my IP address and port are jammed together, making it difficult to read. To resolve this, we could add a constant like a space between the 2 fields within our function. Notice that we enclose our constant with double quotes. When we test this, notice we have a little bit of daylight between the IP and port. Let's refine this a bit further to be a little more descriptive by adding a constant in front of the IP address as well as a / and the word port in front of port. All right, that looks much better. What happens if we want to add a match section to our rule so that we can aggregate by our principal IP address? Notice that when we add our match section and match variable of principal_IP, our outcome variable is no longer valid. The error message that we get is that event values in a match window must be aggregated. We can resolve this by adding the aggregation function of array_distinct around our outcome variable. This time, notice we get 2 detections based on our time window. Notice that our aggregated outcome variables are shown in the detection, and when we expand the detections, we can see the events with their respective target.ip and target.port values. Hopefully that provides a nice set of examples of how strings.concat can be used with outcome variables. Now, let's highlight an example of how strings.concat can be used in the events and match section. Rather than grouping our detection on the principal IP, we're going to aggregate our detections by the target.ip and port. To do this, we can use strings.concat in the events section and save this value to a placeholder variable. That placeholder variable can then be used as a match variable in the match section to aggregate values over a time window. This is just like any other match variable we have previously built, but this time it is based on 2 values concatenated together with a / thrown in to separate the IP and port. In our results, we can see that match variable in our detection. One final thought as we wrap up this demonstration of the strings.concat function. Throughout this demonstration, we use the first value in the repeated field for target_IP by specifying a placeholder variable or target_IP for the field network.target.IP square bracket 0, close square bracket. What if we didn't care about the specificity of the repeated value of the target IP? What if we just said, give me all the values that exist for target IP? Well, we could just prepend the array_distinct aggregation function to our strings.concat function. The important point here is that we would need to use the array_distinct for the rule, whether or not it had a match section in it. We covered a lot of ground here, and there's even more use cases for strings.concat. In fact, I'm holding back one of these for when we get to reference lists, so make sure you keep checking back with us. Remember that string, integer, and float fields can all be used in the strings.concat function. Couple these with constants and we can generate some descriptive string values. Using the function is easy, we just need to separate the fields and constants with commas. And remember, the constants need to be enclosed in quotes. Placeholder variables and UDM field names can be used as well. Finally, we use strings.concat in the outcome section to describe values within our detection, but we also use it in the events section to create a placeholder variable and a match variable as well. There are lots of ways to use this function. Just be mindful of repeated values in fields as you develop your rules. If you want to learn more about Chronicle, check out my blog series called New to Chronicle for more handy tips. We have a number of community YARA-L detections at our GitHub site and are continually adding more. And don't forget to engage the security community at secopscommunity.com.